Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi is directed by Richard Marquand and stars everyone returning from Episode 5 and 4, and it's the third and final film of the original Star Wars trilogy.
To give you fair warning, we will be talking spoilers, so you have been warned.
Now, to keep this review simple, as always, we are going to be talking positives and negatives, so we're going to jump right into the positives with the story. The story in this movie is pretty simple, but it's still pretty powerful. Basically, at the beginning, you know, everyone's trying to free Han Solo from being frozen in carbonite. And yeah, it's a little drawn out, but it's still entertaining and fun. And shortly afterward, Luke travels back to Dagobah to finish training to be a Jedi with Yoda. And then eventually, you know, he has to face off against Darth Vader after all this stuff happens on the moon of Endor, where they destroy the shield generator for the Death Star. And it's a great story. It's simple when you break it down, but it's also very entertaining and fun.
So I really like how this movie goes to a bunch of different places. We see a lot of different planets, a lot of different sets. We're on the Death Star for a while. We're on Dagobah for a while again. We're back on Endor.
And Tatooine.
Tatooine. There's tons of different places that we go to in this, and there's a lot of cool characters that we get to follow along with. And I feel like finally we're getting into the Star Wars part of it, where they're fighting basically to the death in all these different places, and I really like that.
Yeah, not only do we get a lot of new places, but we get a lot of new ships. This is the first time, to my knowledge, that we see the B-Wing, and that is my personal favorite ship of the Rebellion. I just love how it's shaped. It's a T. I don't know why they call it a B, but it's cool looking. It stands up, and you get more of the A-Wing. You get some more Y-Wings. There's a lot of varieties of ships. You even get like the TIE interceptors in this. It's so much fun, and there's a lot of just iconic scenes in this movie, in particular with Jabba the Hutt barge scene at the Sarlacc pit, where we get our first look at a green lightsaber. Every other lightsaber before was either blue or red, and this time Luke activates his lightsaber for the first time, and it's green. And every time I see it, I just get happy because I just like the way the green lightsaber looks, because the blue is classic, but the green is special. It's different. And I always liked that scene, mainly because of that reason. The action in that scene is a little off. It's not that exciting when you watch it nowadays, at least. And Boba Fett's death is very anticlimactic. He just gets bumped by a blind Han Solo when he falls to his death. But maybe we'll get a better version of Boba Fett in the Han Solo movie next year.
I think this is one of the movies that tries to fit so much into it, but it works. A lot of times when you have so many different things and smaller scenes, smaller shots, different storylines happening all at once, it can get really, really confusing. But this one seems so seamless, even with all of the classic wipes to and from places and things happening. It's very seamless. You kind of forget that there's so much going on until the end when you're tired because you're having to pay so close of attention.
Yeah.
But even with that said, even the slow parts keep moving. I feel like it's not too fast and it's not too slow. It's like a really well-paced movie.
Yeah. And the death of Yoda, I would say that's one of the slower parts of the movie, but it's still got some emotion in it. And you get another big twist in this movie that Leia is Luke's sister right after the death of Yoda. So that is an important moment in the movie, very important. And the fact that they split the climax of the movie into 3 different scenarios, I still love that, and it's still being like copied, especially in Star Wars movies. In this movie, you have Luke on the Death Star facing off against Darth Vader and the Emperor, which, side note, this is the first time we actually see the Emperor in physical form. In the last movie, we just saw a hologram of him. And Darth Vader always said, or he said in this movie, the Emperor is not as forgiving as I am, which I find is a contradiction because the Emperor actually seems a little more forgiving. He didn't actually kill anybody that failed him. Anyway, you got Luke against Darth Vader and the Emperor. You got Han Solo, Leia, and C-3PO, Chewbacca, and R2-D2 on Endor, the moon of Endor. And then you've got Wedge and Lando and Admiral Akbar all facing off in space. So again, the battle split into 3 parts. They tried to mimic that in Phantom Menace with the battle being split up again. Then I think they did it again with Rogue One. It's kind of split into a few scenarios, but it works. And this one is the one that really started it and really took it, the climax of a movie, to new levels. And I love every moment of that big, epic battle.
I also really like how this movie really strikes a balance between comic relief and drama and action and all of the many things that happen, how they can just be really, really balanced and flow nicely one into the other. And I also love how many of the creatures are practical. Like, obviously during this time they didn't have a whole lot of CGI capabilities, but I think the puppetry trumps, good puppetry trumps CGI every single time. With Jabba, with Yoda, with the Rancor, with Sarlacc pit, all of it is practical and it looks awesome. And going into a little bit of the negative, with the new release and I don't like the new Sarlacc pit with the little egg-shaped clam coming out of it. I'd rather they would have just left it the way it was. And the fact that they changed the ghost at the end into Hayden Christensen instead of the real Darth Vader.
Yeah.
That bothers me a lot still to this day.
And the fact that they added the yelling.
Yeah, the audio for that part was
awful.
Not good.
When Darth Vader picks the Emperor up to throw him down the pit.
Yeah, that was not unnecessary.
Bad.
It makes it silly. It makes it
really
very
does.
silly. It ruins that moment that I love so much from the original one.
And I do have to say, as interesting as the plot is to rescue Han Solo from being frozen in carbonite from Jabba's palace, it is very long and drawn out. I remember being bored as a kid watching the first half hour of this movie. That is those scenes. It's all on Tatooine. You get like a repeat of the same thing over and over again with C-3PO and R2-D2 coming to the palace, getting let in, and they're captured, and it's like, hey, you're going to be slaves for Jabba the Hutt. And then Leia comes in with Chewie, and okay, Chewie's been captured, and this bounty hunter as Leia wants money, and she frees him. And then Luke comes in, and he's bargaining. And it's just over and over. It's very repetitive, and it gets a little annoying. But you finally get the saving of Han Solo, which is played out pretty nicely.
One pretty big negative I have is the dialogue in this is very, very, how shall I say?
80s?
I was going to say more like 60s, 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Especially comes out when Luke is speaking to the Force ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi on Dagobah. He's just like, Luke, I did not want to lose you the way I lost your father. And that whole conversation just seems very dated.
Yeah, it's very precise language.
Which is great,
like,
but it's
doesn't
not...
feel natural.
Yes, it's not natural.
Very forced.
I almost feel like Luke made not quite a 180 turn with his character, but he seems a lot less like Luke Skywalker from the first two.
Yeah.
And I think they're trying to do that because now he's a Jedi Master. He's supposed to be very cool, calm, and collected. But I just feel like there was such a big gap between the two. You don't really know how long it's been. You assume it's been a long time.
A couple weeks, maybe months.
Because it's taken, Lando a few months or years to infiltrate Jabba's palace. Yep. It's taken a while for them to plan out how they're going to defeat the Death Star and all of that. So you assume it's kind of been a long time, but I don't think it's been long enough for Luke to actually become a Jedi Master.
Yeah.
And to totally become all-wise and all-knowing like he seems. Especially when his plan doesn't play out as it should.
Right.
Because he gets captured and then has to figure out things. So, also, you know, with the Force powers, he threw the rock at the Rancor. Why not just Force push the button?
Yeah. That was...
or the door, or Force jump out of that pit before you know.
Because he did that in Empire Strikes Back.
He Force jumps onto the bridge afterwards, and
it's a little inconsistent with what he's able to do with his Jedi powers, but I mean, it's all for sake of suspense and keeping the action scene more grounded, I guess, instead of him being overpowered, which he kind of is, in the sense he's got, you know, he can Force choke people like Darth Vader. He can do the mind manipulation like Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I don't know, he's got all the Jedi powers.
He has all of the Jedi powers, he just hasn't perfected any of them.
And he always forgets to use them when he needs them the most sometimes. So I know a lot of people might disagree with me, but one of my negatives is the Ewoks. Now originally I believe that they was supposed to be a planet of Wookiees, but it got to be too expensive, so they changed it to Ewoks, which are half the size of Wookiees. And they're cute, I guess, especially Wicket. But they defeat the stormtroopers with rocks and wooden sticks. And some of it makes sense, like those big giant logs coming down and smashing the AT-STs. But the idea that they're just beating the stormtroopers down just kind of gets a little dumb as you grow up. When I was a kid, I enjoyed it. I loved it. But now that I'm older, it doesn't quite work for me. It's like, that armor does nothing. And the fact that C-3PO has a huge part in the fact that they pretty much worship him because he's like a god to them because of what Luke did. He used his Jedi powers. But the fact that C-3PO does play a huge role in this movie, both at the beginning with the Ewoks. I just thought there was too much C-3PO, and the Ewoks added to that, unfortunately.
The other thing I don't understand is how a traitor like Han Solo becomes a commander and general in the Rebel Alliance, and how Lando Calrissian, who's a smuggler and totally against whatever, becomes a general.
Yeah.
And
it's like the rebellion is just desperate for commanding officers. Like, you're a general, you're a captain.
And I mean, I get it, and it's only because I've looked closer at it over the years to really be like, hey, wait a second. But their drama that happens with all of the main characters just stops everything. Like in this meeting they're having where they're trying to plan out what are we going to do, all of this stuff, and then all of a sudden, in the business world, as a teacher, as a film editor, you go to a meeting unprepared, you're going to get chewed out.
Yeah.
Okay? And Han Solo's coming and he's like, my team's ready, but I don't have somebody to actually do what you're asking me to do. It's like, I don't have a command team for the
You had one job, Han Solo.
Team. You had one thing to do. How is your team ready if they're not ready? I don't understand if you don't even have people for it. And then all of a sudden, all these integral people are volunteering. It's like, well, how can you volunteer? Yeah. Don't you have a different job to do?
What was Chewie doing before he volunteered for this? What was Leia doing? And Luke. It's like, them three were like, I'll help you.
Right. Plus, none of them are really trained military people. Like,
nope.
It's just because it's, you know, you have to do this. Even though, especially you can see it on Endor when Han is supposed to be in charge and he's like, let's just wait here until we find Luke and Leia. Yeah. Like, you know, and the other guy is like, okay, go. And then he's yelling at people to give him charges inside of the thing. Yeah. Come on. And you're just...
I just wonder...
But how was this executed well? I don't understand how this succeeded. Oh, it's because of the Ewoks.
Mm-hmm. The Ewoks
which
saved everything.
Also doesn't make sense. But they're cute. It's like a bunch of teddy bears taking on
The Empire.
The Empire.
Now I just want to know, during that meeting, while Han Solo and Leia and Chewie and Luke, they're all having their little conversations.
Reunion, yes.
Yeah. But
reunion.
what is Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar and General Nadine doing? They're just like, okay, we got to keep rolling here. This is important. We have a lot more tactics to talk through.
Because
you guys are just hugging it out. Come on.
Luke and Leia are like, or Leia's like, what's wrong, Luke? And
Yeah.
It's like,
remind me
they're
again
all
sometime.
like so intently listening to their
Yeah.
conversation. What is going on
Do you
with
think they're
those
brother
two?
and sister?
What is happening?
That could be it.
Oh, this looks like a love triangle. What happened with Han and Leia? Because they were together for a second, and now Luke's in the picture. What is happening here?
And then Wedge chimes in like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Can I get in my X-Wing and just start shooting stuff? There were things that were just kind of brushed over just because we need to focus on the main characters, and that's fine.
Which is fine.
But
and again, you don't really notice it until you
Right.
scrutinize it.
yes, I still think it would be great to have a Wedge Antilles movie, but it would be weird because they'd have to like CGI his face and stuff or whatever. But we at least need a movie focused solely on a rebel fighter pilot like Wedge and not Poe Dameron. So obviously we could just keep talking for hours about this movie and how great it is. The music, it's fantastic. It's John Williams, it's Star Wars. The action is awesome, the special effects are awesome, the ships are awesome. Everything is awesome in this movie. There are negatives that we just talked about that kind of bring it down a little bit. But in my opinion, this is one of the best Star Wars movies, and I gotta give Star Wars Return of the Jedi an A. Those small negatives kind of bring it down just a tiny bit, but you know, certain days this might be my favorite Star Wars movie, but it's mainly because of the long, drawn out Jabba palace scenes that really kind of just take it down for me, and that's why I got to give it an A.
I really love the balance and the pace of this movie. I love the characters. I love all the variety of places that you go to. I love the special effects, the music. There's just not a whole lot not to love, and most of it's just nitpicky. I give Return of the Jedi an A. I really love this movie. I think it's a really good ending to the trilogy, which is really hard to do, especially nowadays. I just feel like a lot of times people bank off of what people love from the first couple. And this one was just really different and very well paced, so that's why I give it an A.
So what did you guys think of Star Wars Return of the Jedi? Did you like it, love it, or hate it? Let us know in the comments below.
And if you liked this video, be sure to give it a big ol' thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. And be sure to hit that bell icon so you can be notified of when we upload new content. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.